Welcome to the best podcast on the entire internet. Coming to you from the Road ID studios, this is the Gravelot, part of the Wide Angle Podium network of shows. My name's John.
My name is Doug, and the Gravelot starts with the common connection of the bicicletta, but it is so much more than that one specific object.
It's one of our hosts who still wants to be an actor.
It's true.
So we love all things bike related, and honestly, we consider y'all our family. So just like you are so much more than just a cyclist.
Yeah, we like to talk about all the things that happen around your life. So, on to today's episode.
Which is being brought to you by, there's going to be a theme today.
What's this theme today?
Coffee.
Stimulation.
Careful.
Stimulation of conversation, of your brain waves, keeping you awake.
Yes.
Coffee.
Yes,
this week is indeed brought to you by none other than Grimpeur Brothers Coffee.
Yes.
And there's a reason for that. If you saw the show that you're currently listening to.
Yeah, you clicked on the show, we would assume.
Or maybe your player is automatically playing it and you don't know because you just get up.
And if you are, thank you for being a longtime Pebble.
I'm going to try to set your Alexa off. Alexa, play the Gravel Lot. See if I can make that work. But now a different episode of us is now playing in your house.
We're getting off topic.
It's fine, but we're going to talk about
Grimpeur Brothers Coffee.
Exactly. And Grimpeur Brothers has been supporting cyclists since day one. Dan, who you're going to get to hear from here very, very shortly.
In way better detail than I'm going to give you right now.
Yeah, about how this all happened. He's going to tell you how all of the Grimpeur Brothers story works and kind of a little bit of his addressment to cycling and how he got there. But if you purchase coffee from Grimpeur Brothers, 9 times out of 10, it's going to support cycling, in some fashion.
I think, honestly, it's actually 10 out of 10.
I mean, because Dan's a cyclist, so
right.
I guess. Yeah.
And not that we're partial or anything.
But we kind of are.
We are. We have skin in this game. So we
Correct.
want you to go buy the full Schleck and the Hello Cyclocross Friends blends. So Hello Cyclocross Friends is an espresso blend, but
Sure.
you can make it as regular coffee.
Make it
I
however
got
you
an
want.
amazing Americano the other day.
There's no coffee.
There are no rules in coffee.
Making shaming.
I mean, there probably
there are some
there
rules.
probably are rules,
There are actual
just like there
legitimate
are
rules.
rules in cycling. But we don't pay attention to those rules because you can make whatever you want.
Yeah, no
you
coffee
do you,
shaming.
boo boo.
Yeah, you do you. You do what you want. But make sure it's one of those 2 blends because the proceeds from those blends go back to the shows on the Wide Angle Podium that advertise Dan's coffee.
Right.
So that helps support our show, continue bringing great content like this awesome interview that we're going to have with Dan.
Right. So you can go to Grimpeur Brothers website, hit up the show notes, click that link, or you can go to the wideanglepodium.com/coffee.
You got to say it like Linda Richmond.
Coffee. Or just go to the wideanglepodium.com. There's a giant logo on the homepage. Click that. Go find your coffee. Go support the network. Go support the people that support your sport, doing things, good stuff. Let's talk to Dan.
Indeed, but I do want to say one thing. If we're going to talk to Dan, is this coffee talk with Linda Richmond?
Coffee talk?
I'll give you a topic. The topic is coffee with Dan Manco. So our guest today may be one of the people on our show that we have talked more about than anyone else who's actually been on the show.
I think
like by sheer volume of mentions,
yes,
he's probably been talked about.
He's been added the most, for sure.
Yeah, for sure, without a doubt. He is, of course, a cyclist, but he is also a longtime digital marketing and strategy entrepreneur working in that kind of space, a space that's familiar to John, which is a good thing. He is a lover of all things Morrissey, except for the problematic parts, of course. And of course,
I'm not down with that part.
Of course, but all the other stuff, the good stuff. And he is the coffee man. He is Bike Santa, otherwise known as the man behind Grimpeur Brothers Coffee, or more formally, Dan Manco. Dan, welcome to the Gravel Lot.
Thanks, guys. That was an awesome intro.
I'm super excited for all of our listeners to be able to get to know you like we know you, and I know we've been talking about this again since, just like Adam, since Nationals last year, of trying to figure out when we can get you on the show and really be able to tell your story. And pre-recording, you're talking, I don't know if I should be on your show, and
stop. No.
And and it's like, stop it. Nope, we're doing this. And
absolutely.
And you have a great story.
Speaking of Adam, honestly, like I don't know if you guys have dropped the second episode yet, but incredible interview. Like I know him a little bit. I've seen him do, and I've got a funny Adam story that I'll tell you. But God, you guys are killing it. It's not like I'm trying to fluff you guys or anything, but everyone you've been talking to, it's just been amazing, and it's cool to see. Like, I mean, I'll give you a compliment. You guys are I really see you guys growing as interviewers and podcasters and entertainers, etc. It's just really cool and just super kudos.
Thank you. I think of everything that means the world, because it's something that Doug and I talk about every week of continually trying to be better and pointing out things that we're doing well and things that we aren't doing well, and always putting ego aside when we talk about the show. Talk about the show is how do we
don't lie,
make it
John.
better.
Don't lie, John. We talk about it every day.
Yes.
Except for the weekends when we take time off from talking about podcasts.
To do bikes.
That's awesome.
To just right.
Hey guys, can I do a quick update?
Yeah, any updates are great.
I now have mating hummingbirds outside my window.
Okay,
Holy
very good.
Shit. They were dive bombing each other, and they started doing it. I'm like, wait a minute, what do they do? Oh,
so before
round two. Fuck.
they weren't angry before when they were attacking each other. They were just extremely randy.
Yeah, they were pent up.
Holy crap, I've never seen that before. Oh my God.
So for all of the Pebbles who don't know, Dan has some hummingbird feeders, and it is starting to be that season down in Austin, and they're kind of migrating, and you're getting to see all sorts of cool wildlife stuff. So that's neat.
Yeah, and I'm blushing because I'm embarrassed.
They're not. Don't worry.
They're fine. Yeah, they're not worried about you.
They might be into that. I'm unsure what. Do not kink shame on this show. I do not kink shame on this show. Whatever hummingbirds or anyone else is into,
you do you.
That's your thing. So this is awesome. We're stoked to have you here. We're stoked to have you joining us. Obviously, your story and the Grimpeur brothers story is important to us. We want to talk about that. But the first thing we want to dive in on is find out how you, Dan, found bikes. How did you find bikes into your life? Where was that entry point for you?
Well, it's interesting because it's the typical kids entry where I don't remember my first bike, but I remember the first bike that I liked that I was in grade school, and it was kind of like a knockoff of a Schwinn or a Huffy, but it was a gold bike with a banana seat, a black banana seat, so it was kind of cool because it sparkled. The gold bike sparkled, and rode it around the neighborhood, and like set up baby jumps, and I would ride over them. I never got any air. Right, and it was just like riding around with the kids. It wasn't quite like ET, but
kind of like Stranger Things, just a little bit.
Yeah, it was kind of like that, except it was earlier. I mean, I grew up in the 70s, so it was kind of that. It was more Evel Knievel vibe. He was big at the time. Then one Christmas, I got a baby blue 10-speed Huffy, took it outside, and immediately crashed it on the ice.
Of course, because this is not, now, folks, you weren't, Dan, you were not in Austin at that time, right?
No, actually, I was in Kansas City, Missouri at that time when I got that bike. And
it can get cold there.
It gets cold there. Yeah, so that bike lasted me for a while, and then I frankly in high school lost interest, and I've never been athletic. I'm not an athletic guy per se, but I kind of lost interest through it, and I only got back into bikes in '89 for two reasons. One was I messed up my knee playing tennis, and I was in business school, and I used to play tennis every night at like 11 o'clock because I was in Phoenix, and that was the only time when it was cool enough to play tennis. And I blew my knee out, and it was like, oh, what do I do? And a friend of mine from Boulder was like, well, let's ride bikes. I've got a bike. And so I went out and I bought a red and white Nishiki that probably weighed a ton. And it was a nice 10-speed, it didn't have to spend too much money, and started riding in a t-shirt and bibs. And what was great was, I was in business school in Phoenix, and I was on the edge of town and near some mountains, and God, you could just go forever and ever. and I fell in love again with bikes. And so it was a combination of that, and Le Mans won the Tour that year in '89, and it was the epic like 8-second Tour over Fignon, and that got me into the romance of bike racing. It just kind of kept at it. I eventually got an LA, which are super cool and hip now, but they weren't that hip when I got one, and it's still hanging on my back porch. But I'm gonna fix it someday. By this time I'm in New York, and the writing there is just amazing. Once you get out of the city, there's you've got the Upper Hudson or the Lower Hudson Valley, things like famous routes like River Road and 9W. You can go all the way to the Orchards or Bear Mountain. And my girlfriend, now wife, also rode bikes, and she kicked my ass, and it was awesome. It was one of those things where I liked her because she would drag me up mountains or hills, really steep hills, and she was just she rode crew in college. So she was much more fit than I was at the time, and it was part of it. Added to an outdoor life that when you're in the city, you miss green, you miss the outdoors. It's great in New York City that you're right by the beach, and you get that ocean, and I've got a real tie to the ocean, but you also could get in the Hudson Valley, and all of a sudden it was green and like great bike riding. Around this time, I had a friend, Nigel, who I found out was a collegiate mountain bike racer. And he's like, "Can I come ride with you one day?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, come on." And we started doing laps in Prospect Park, and he showed up with this really cool circa 80s race mountain bike or 90s mountain bike. And he was a beast. Like I couldn't hold his wheel, and he's on a mountain bike and I'm on a road bike, right? And he's just ripping through stuff. And it's the dead of winter, and we started talking. And eventually we both got race bikes, and he's like, "Come on, let's go race." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm like," he's like, "No, you can get race fit." And there's races in Prospect Park and in Central Park. That was really like my first entry. I had always dreamed about that, and I got into cycling and the Grand Tours, and I remember, there's all kinds of, stories of, fun times back in .com days of like, I had a Spanish intern who knew where the Spanish station was for the tour. So it was like an early live stream of the tour on a radio, and it's in Spanish, and we're working listening to it. And I got really geeky about bike racing, and then did club racing, and I suck at it, right? I'm not an athlete. I love doing it though. It was like the sound of when you're in the peloton. And whenever the race got serious, the last couple of laps, and and I have to preface this is that you have to get up really early to race in New York City on the weekends, because you have to be able. When I was doing it, you had to be out of the park by 8 o'clock in the morning.
What?
So that meant yeah. So you did, and there's all kinds of there's the usual categories. So what they did is that you would start at 6:30 in the morning. And so that meant you had to get up at 4:30, get some kind of food and coffee into you, take a dump, and then be at either Central Park or Prospect Park by like 6 to warm up, or sooner, get pinned up, and then be ready to race at 6:30. And they would release the categories by stages, by 5-minute intervals. And of course people would all catch each other, etc. And the real racing was way up front, but that sound of you're with like 40, 50 people, and you're all, all you hear is the cassettes, that psst, totally got me off. And I was just like, I'm just happy to be here. Because whenever the race got serious, the last lap or the next to last lap, and there was, I'd hang on to the climb up Harlem Hill, and then there was another hill in Central Park. It's a slight rise. It's a false flat kind of, but it's a hill. And I always got spit out the back. And my friends were always like, "You just got to hold on." And I never could do it. But it was just cool. I just loved doing that. It was just, I'm somewhat competitive, but maybe not really, or I wasn't really good enough to bury myself because I'm not an athlete to catch back on. But it was fun, and it was great, and the people were great, and it was like, going on group rides afterwards or grabbing coffee.
So in there you mentioned the word love, and I want to go all the way back to Arizona, and you talk about exploring as a kid and riding bikes as a kid, and I think your story's fairly similar to mine, that it was just what you did. You rode around your neighborhood, you jumped curbs and pretended you were Evel Knievel and all of that stuff. And I'm curious, when your friend, after blowing out your knee, said, "Let's ride bikes," and you're talking about cotton t-shirt and bibs, What do you think it was that put you over or put cycling over for you? Because until then, it was you were looking for an outlet. So how did it go from this is an option to I want this to be my lifestyle?
Okay, it's okay if I curse like Amanda Batty on this, right? She's already kind of like lit.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll just
Yeah,
mark you
right.
Dan Manco explicit.
Right.
All right. You get on a bike in the desert, and it's like, holy fucking shit, I love this. It's the effort, it's the experience, and it's being outdoors. And it's eventually it's learning. It's the whole progression of going, oh fuck, I don't know what I'm doing. I hope I can hold his wheel. To eventually learning how to do that. Learning how to dose your efforts in bike racing, but just riding for pleasure and seeing things that you would never see and experiencing a road that is completely different on a bike than it would be walking or in a car, more than likely. You're zipping by, but my God, when you're feeling like, oh, the surface is rough, or it's like, okay, now I'm in the chip seal, or oh shit, they just paved this. This is going to be awesome, right? To the sensory experiences of just having the wind in your hair, or the fast forward to being on the East Coast in the winter, and it's pissing rain outside. You're still riding, and you make it to Bunbury Cafe in Piermont, New York, and you're freezing, and your hands are almost frozen in the position of the hoods, right? And you go in the coffee shop and you warm up around a coffee, right? And then you start talking about stuff with your friends that you're riding. It's like, yeah, we're kind of stupid because we're out there doing it. We could be on trainers. Yeah, but trainers suck. Let's do this instead. And it's like, well, how far do we want to go? Do we want to keep on going, or we want to turn around, right? It's like you're alive. And that to me, like right now, I try to squeeze in rides when I can, life, family, etc. But my God, like I just feel good on a bike.
Yeah, I hear in your voice and the things you're saying, there's like a romance and a love affair with this thing for you.
Oh God, yeah. It's everything from the history of like I geek out during spring classic season and all the Belgian craziness, right? Or the cobbles. Like I have a friend who used to laugh and give me a hard time about like, yeah, I don't watch, I won't watch Paris-Roubaix, I'll just watch your Twitter feed and I know what's going on, right? I mean, I get like that geeked out about those races because it's just like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing that.
So how do you feel? Do you have a seminal moment that, aside from your own personal experience on the bike, like if you look back at the history of you like watching bikes, do you have a seminal moment that said this is the thing that gave you the kind of impetus to fall in love with the sport outside of your own enjoyment of it?
There's a couple of them. Yeah, there's definitely a couple of them. One is Le Mans in '89.
Yeah, that was that for me too, because that was like I was 12, 13, and I was falling in love with bikes. Watching Le Mans,
Right.
that blew my mind.
Yeah, and it was hyped up, and it was just like it was amazing. Frankly, the explosion of Armstrong and U.S. Postal, and that whole doping era, which has really kind of tinged and anyone, frankly, the cynicism of doping, and then it pains me, but I still, frankly, it's the romance, because Eddie Merckx doped, right? Okay, there's always been performance enhancing, and I want a clean sport, and I want a clean pro sport because you see the damage that it does to someone's psyche, and there's tons of other people. You can probably every major city that has any kind of cycling scene has those guys who were good enough but were denied. So there's that kind that frankly that period I love hate just because of the real world horribleness of it, of what it did to people's psyches. Now that said, it's a spectacle, and it always has been. If you go back to the origins of Grand Tours, for instance, they were set up by newspapers to sell newspapers. They needed content. The yellow jersey is yellow because the newspaper was yellow. The pink jersey is pink because the Italian paper was on pink newsprint, right? And they were set up as spectacles, and they just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's like, how far can you push it? And well, we saw it in the doping era.
And I think a lot of people have a complicated relationship
Yeah.
with that era as watching it as a casual fan. And I mean, full disclosure, I came kind of back to cycling right at the crest of all of that in 07, and my first bike was a Trek, and yada yada yada, and a lot of it was because of that momentum. And I mean, I wasn't around for a lot of that, and I was naive to a lot of it. And now looking back on it, I'm kind of happy, I guess, that I didn't that it wasn't I didn't feel like it was my sport, because now I feel like cycling is part of how I define myself and as who I am, and it would really, really hurt me to go through that with everybody in our community.
If we found out like tomorrow that despite going on, because I know he's going to, I'm putting my money on this, even though we're recording this before it's happened, that Mathieu van der Poel, the current world road champion,
right, going to win the
because we are ahead of this when we're recording this.
You know what? Respect, because I want to see it.
Yeah, no doubt. But like, my heart would break inside
sure.
if I found out he was doping and wasn't just the genetic and monstrous freak of a human that he is.
I mean, same thing for Wout or
sure,
Sagan
or any of
those
people.
guys,
for sure.
Or right now, like Denise Betsema,
sure,
is going to be the #1 women's ranked UCI cross racer. That's like fucked up.
Yeah, that's a hard one to swallow.
And it's like, well, come on, UCI, just fucking take her off the board. What the fuck?
Right. So that kind of leads me to my next kind of question is, in listening to your story, you define yourself as a cyclist, but it is very clear that you're a super fan, and you have not only you have a romance with the experience of cycling, but you have a romance with the entire sport. But in listening to how you talk about it, you kept putting a crowbar differentiator in there that I'm not an athlete, I'm not an athlete, I'm not an athlete. And I'm curious as to why are you not an athlete, Dan?
That's a really good question. So here's why, and it's kind of it brings a lot of different things to the fore, and part of it is like the whole eating disorder thing with cyclists and pro athletes. To be honest, like, I've always been a bit intimidated and super conscious of like seeing amazingly, well-defined athletes. And then, I'll go ride a century if I like build up to it and cool, I'm down with it. Or I like competing in the back in cross races. But I always didn't feel like I was good enough. And frankly, it partly stretches some medical history. Like I have messed up knees partly from when I was born. I don't know exactly what happened, but I can't run very good, which is a real drag because I think I'd be a better cross racer if I could run. Like I have this like horrific like childhood memory of gym class and fighting with the last guy not to be last in the 600-yard dash or run or whatever, right? I vividly remember that. And it's always kind of stuck with me. So I'm kind of always like, oh, well, I'm not like, I'm not that, I'm not an athlete. Okay. And that said, having exposure to world-class athletes and then knowing the work that they do, I just don't feel like I am. Yeah. Am I going to go ride 40 miles a couple of times this weekend in gravel? Sure. Yeah. If I get my nerve up, and frankly, I've got like, I think about 5.5 hours to decide whether I'm going to register for a race or not. There's a super cool race in San Antonio called Best Cross. It races under the lights on Saturday night. And I just want to do it to race under the lights. And I'll probably come in dead fucking last because I don't feel like I'm in any kind of shape right now. But I'm also kind of like, right? So I've got kind of that like chip on my shoulder about it. I don't know. It's kind of a hard one for me. But can I tell you one thing?
Hold on, Dan. Okay. Hold on, because I understand this. I was a crap athlete in elementary school and junior high school, and frankly, high school. But I did a thing. I showed up and I played B and C level hockey, and I showed up and I practiced, and I wasn't really great. Never made the travel team. Never did any of that. But I was an athlete,
It's just a word.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like yeah, it just
Dan, you're an athlete.
You are.
Because
Yeah.
because how many
okay,
people?
cool. I'm an athlete.
You
I'll
are.
get off of that. Yeah, okay, fine. I ride bikes.
Yeah, but think about how many people, who like we are in a space now where if we look back and you're like people can't even figure out how to get off the couch,
Oh,
or and they aren't even using that word, but we should be using this word to define them. If they got up and walked a mile, they're doing an athletic endeavor, and all
fair
of
enough.
us are doing
You're
things that are so much bigger.
absolutely right. Okay, so I'll put it this way: I'm not an elite athlete. How's that?
Hell no one in this room is either.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
geez.
that's a much
Right.
smaller
You know,
pool of
but
people.
you're pointing to something that's really important, and this is like my thing that I've got to get over, and more importantly, it's to society, because there's part of the thing. Put a pin on how I keep the passion in cycling, because there's something really cool about that. But what's important about cycling is that, to me, in terms of fitness, is like, one, if you ride your bike, it's really good for you. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter whether you're riding 40 miles, you're riding 100, you're riding 200 miles a week, or, you're doing it a couple of times, a couple of hours here and there. It's really good for you, and it's really good for your overall, for your health. It's really good for your mental health too, right? I mean, it's kind of like my therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Mine too.
And two, and this will get into bigger issues that we can talk about, is that cycling is so important for the world right now. And the reason why it is because it's part of a solution to some of the major problems that societies are facing all over the world. Health, yes, but global climate change, transportation, and how we use the world. A bike is central to helping to solve those things, right? And that's a bigger issue that we can talk about or not talk about. But getting back to the things that I'm passionate about and get off of like my hang up, I got more passionate back into bike racing during the doping era because of cross. I can't remember exactly how, but I think it was Chris Hewler, Cycle Boredom, out of DC. Shout out. Somehow we were like connected on Twitter, and he started talking about these janky pirate feeds of bike races. And it might have been through classics or whatever. And then it was just like, oh my God, and just discovering cross, and it being at a kind of at I don't want to call it grassroots like it is here, because in Belgium it's freaking NASCAR, but there was like something that was somewhat unspoiled about it. And you're watching these really bitmappy feeds, and they're in fields, and it's muddy, and it's the dead of winter, and I don't want to ride my trainer because there's a foot of snow outside New York City, and this is fucking awesome. And I can communicate with a bunch of people on Twitter about it, and it's like, oh shit. That like opened up something to me that was just magical. And that's part of I love the fucking classics. I piss all over the tour, but I always get drawn back into it. I love the Giro. And by the time the Vuelta runs, I should love the Vuelta, because like part of my heritage is Spanish, Spain. I'm like tired, and I just want to see the World Championships.
Sure. So let's address a couple things in there. Is that, first off, I don't feel like Doug, myself, or you need to really belabor the fact that we know bikes can change lives, can change communities, can change climate, can do all of these things, because it's the premise of our show. It's where we approach the world, and I think everybody that listens to us already kind of knows that, and it's baked into what we're doing.
Yeah, it's part of the gospel.
That's why our first question is, how'd you find bikes? And what makes you love bikes? Second, the spring classics are just big ass cross races, and I think we can all agree with that.
Very long cross races.
So I think like
let's
just check that off. But I'm curious is so you find these ghetto feeds, and you're watching either old or somewhat delayed streaming cyclocross races, and you're interacting with people and kind of building the same community like you were doing with your New York racing scene. When you went to your first cross race, can you describe that for us? Because I gotta believe you had built it up in your head. You had an expectation of what it was. So then when you went to your first cross race, how did it or didn't it live up to your expectations of what you expected?
It was incredible.
What race was it?
It's a race that's not around anymore. It was on Staten Island, and I think it was like Staten Island Cross or something. And it was on a beach that was wiped out by Hurricane Sandy.
Well, that explains why it's not here anymore.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but
A little difficult.
it had gone. It was only around for like a couple of years. But I mean, I'll drop some names. Molly Herford was racing for Rutgers College then.
Friend of the show and fellow Wide Angle Podium podcaster of the Consummate Athlete.
And all around badass. And she was racing at Rutgers, and Bike Snob, even New York City Bikes NYC Bike Snob was racing it, and I actually heckled him, and I felt kind of bad. And I took my son Roberto, who was maybe 5, along with me because it was like a rare Saturday off, and I wanted to go see it. And I spectated and took photographs. And one of the photographs that I took is the original label of our Cross Racer coffee, and it's a bunch of guys on a beach running between a driveway that went into the beach, and then running about 100 yards before they got to stairs off the beach. And the coolest thing, it was brilliant. It was a really, really well laid out course. There was beach, there was flat, there was woods, and it was on Staten Island, and I was able to take a train to go to it. A couple of trains. And I was with my kid, and he liked it because we were out on the beach and we were watching people do funny stuff on bikes. And then eventually I convinced my wife, I was like, hey, I want a bike and I'm going to use it to commute in the city because I was up for a job in the city. And I was like, I'm going to fully on commute, and I need this bike, and I'll commute during the week, and then I'm going to race it in the fall and it's got knobby tires. And she's like, oh, okay. And then we moved down here and started the first race I think I did was, I remember gutting myself for it. And it was so cool. Like I was finished and I could barely breathe. And there was this really badass racer down here. He's a mechanic, and I'm not sure what he's doing yet now. This really nice guy named Ben Cross. And, he
appropriate name, very appropriate name.
Yeah. And he's just an all around good guy. And I've lost touch with him, and I feel bad because, life, he's got a couple of kids. I got my kids. I'm not sure what he's doing professionally, but he was like, you look good out there. And that made, and I was like huffing, like my lungs are burning. And I was like, thanks, man. Little things like that. And it was like discovering the fact that American Cross has, there's a tradition of kind of like these smart aleck heckles, but it was just like super supportive.
There's something that's amazing about that, like, super supportive network that as someone who, and you were a fan of cycling in so many disciplines, right? Looking at it from the outside, looking at it, following it, participating in, races in New York City, doing those sort of things. But like Cross was a window into a place where it wasn't about, is there doping or all that stuff. It was a window into a community. And I feel like
here in the States, especially,
when you found that, that seems to be something that you've latched on to with what you're doing with, Grimpeur and all this stuff. It is Dan taking, I am a fan of this, yet I understand that this is a community and it needs to maintain that community support. How did Grimpeur A come about? And then B, how did you figure out that, like, no, what I want to do with Grimpeur is support cycling?
Well, so that's a really good question. And remind me, because I want to get lost in how did it come about. But remind me this.
No worries. I got you.
It's a little bit involved. So I was lining up one of those 6:30 starts at Prospect Park, and I had one of those little packets full of liquid whatever in it, and it was espresso flavored. And, it was like 10 minutes before, and everybody's lining up because we've got waves, and everybody's like, I open up my thing, it's espresso flavored, I squeeze it in, and I'm like, oh, this sucks. And I look around, and everyone else is doing the exact same thing, right? And then they weren't all espresso flavors, obviously, but it was just like, oh. And then I thought about it afterwards. It's like, yeah, I much rather would have had a doppio, which really would have had a shot of espresso or a coffee. It would have been 10 times better. And then I was like, yeah. And I started thinking about it and talking with friends, riding around, doing laps in the pitch black at Prospect Park, dead of winter. Just kept on talking to people about, wow, yeah, there's this thing about cycling and coffee. And then I kind of looked back at the history of it and the sponsorships with, the different teams and whatever, and then just the love of it. And I was a bit of a foodie. I had become somewhat of a coffee geek and was learning, and it was a couple of my passions put together. And I was like, I think there's an opportunity for an excellent specialty coffee company, not just a coffee company, but a specialty coffee company with really great beans that is tied to cycling. And this was around the time that Rafa was introducing itself into the United States. And I'm a marketer and a strategist and a product person by trade. And I was watching what they were doing with branded content, what we call branded content or content marketing, whatever you want to call it nowadays. And I was like, that's really smart because they were capturing some of the lore of cycling, and the suffer and all that stuff, and that kind of beauty of it. I was like, imbue that into a cycling brand that is coffee related, and those two things go together, and they just do. Everyone wants. If you're training seriously for an event, or you're racing, you're crit racing, and you've got to get up at 4:35 to go do a couple of hours before work starts, you're going to need that coffee. And why should you drink shit coffee? Now, I'm not going to diss on different coffee brands and all that. All coffee's great.
No, that's a different show. There's a whole show on that, and we'll do that one in the Beeline. But
Yeah.
Okay, so you shouldn't drink bad coffee, and you don't have to pay. What I've learned, fast forward, you don't have to pay an arm and a leg to get great coffee, and it's not a huge hassle. You don't have to have crazy expensive machines to do it. I mean, if you want to do espresso at home, yeah, you actually do, and you should expect to spend at least $1,500 to buy a pro machine at a bare minimum, right? You need a very good Spro machine to pull proper shots at home, in my opinion. But a cup of coffee or a press or an AeroPress or a Chemex are, once you learn the proper techniques and using high quality specialty coffee, 6 minutes and you've got or even 4 minutes and you've got your own perfect cup of coffee. And you learn the techniques and you repeat it over and over again, right? And so that became those two, cycling and the fitness and the joy that you get out of it. I get a similar joy from making coffee every morning. It's like, that's my happy time. And it's like, yep, got the grind right. Yeah. Oh, this one's really special. Oh, this one's off. Right. And the marriage of those two, it was like, okay, well, I want to sell 50 shots at the beginning of a bike race. You can't pull 50 simultaneous shots. And I started talking to people and started, in the industry, knew nothing about the coffee industry at all. I was just like, oh, coffee's great. But I know that, I had built up my palate and I had learned a few things about what's good and maybe what's not good, and started talking to everybody. And at the time, I had this friend of mine, Nigel, was really interested in it as well. And we had been riding bikes and talking coffee. And it's like, well, what if we did this? It's like, well, what would it take to start a cycling coffee company? It's like, I don't want to become a master roaster. I actually met a master roaster, and it takes about 15 years to be like a top 10 in the world roaster. I don't want to take the time to get the farm relationships. I don't have the money. I don't know what to look for. I don't want to open up a coffee shop. I don't have the capital to open up a storefront in Brooklyn. What can I do? And this is around the time when e-commerce storefronts became affordable, and things like BigCommerce and Shopify were kind of pioneers in that. And I was like, oh, okay, $60 a month, and I've got a full e-commerce shopping cart, and it was like, or e-commerce coffee site, and I can design it and make it look the way I want it to look. Okay, there's an option. But it's like, well, what do I do about the coffee? And if we finally found this company that basically did, quote, industrial coffees or restaurant coffee. So if you went to any like regular old diner or restaurant in New York City, they kind of had the market cornered, and you were drinking their, I'll call it industrial coffee, but it was, mass audience coffee. It's a cup of coffee. It tasted like what you expect coffee to taste like in a restaurant. But they had an arm that was specialty coffee, that's a higher quality of coffee, that's graded. There's a grading scale, and it's 85 and above for the really good specialty coffee. But they didn't know how to market it. But this company was big enough that they had all these amazing relationships with growers and wholesalers, etc. And so my friend Nigel talked to this guy. They finally were like, yeah, why don't you come in and start cupping coffees, and you want to sell them? See what you can do with it. Because they weren't selling it. They just had access to this amazing coffee, and nobody was buying it. And so spent a summer, and we cupped probably like 70 to 80 different coffees, and we boiled it down to 4 that we liked. And we said, these are the 4. We've got 2 espressos. One's very chocolatey and wonderful, and that's 9 Dub. And then we have another one that's now called Dam Loop. It's a little bit more fruity. You can pull it as you can do a French press, but they sing as espressos. And then we had a classic Ethiopian blueberry bomb. And then we had access to this pea berry from Tanzania that was really nice.
Tanzanian pea berry, my favorite coffee.
and the idea was that, okay, so the names for the coffee, we wanted to name them after either famous routes or routes that we loved or places that we liked. And that was the idea. Grimpeur is French for climber. And that came from Rafa had a pop-up store on the Bowery, almost across the street from where CBGB's was, which was awesome.
Yeah.
But at this time, CBGB's was like an art gallery. And now it's gone, and it's a
R.I.P. CBGB's.
Yeah. So this guy, Mike Spriggs, who's like wonderful, was managing this shop, and they had all the Rafa clothes, and they had some cool gear, and they had some photo exhibits, whatever, just for a summer. And they had a couple of movie nights, and one of them was oh crap, this movie, I think it's called like Stargazers and Water Carriers, and it's about a particular season in the 70s, and it's bike racing, and it has Eddie Merckx. It's on YouTube. Highly recommend you go watch it. It's incredible. It just because the nostalgia is it's those brands from that era, and Eddie Merckx is all over it, and it's like super cool. At the end of the movie, there's about like 15 people there, and he goes, so if you could be reborn as a sprinter or a climber, what would you be reborn as? And he goes, okay, who would want to be a sprinter? A couple of hands go up. Who would want to be a climber? Everybody else's hands went up, because like this movie showed, like, I get geeked out when the Grand Tours go to the mountains and they're climbing in clouds. And I've had that experience a couple of times in my life, and it's just glorious to be on a road bike, killing yourself going up a mountain into the clouds, and then if you're lucky enough to get above them. And it's just it's mind blowing. It really, really is. And so, anyways, so Grimpeur, I was like, I can't call ourselves Climber Brothers. That sounds kind of boring. And well, yeah, Grimpeur, that's French Tour de France. Okay, that's Euro. That's kind of hip. And then Nigel did all the design, and then we put the labels together. We picked our 4 coffees. The marketing kicked in, and I looked at like my social media universe, and I was like, okay, let's do a mailing to them. And I like reached out to everybody, go, can I have your mailing address? I'm not being weird, but I want to send you something cool. And they're like, what? And it's like, don't worry, I'm not the Unabomber. I'm going to send you something cool. And so we sent out coffee to like 50 people who were, quote, influencers. But it wasn't like, oh, here's coffee, talk about it. It's just like, hey, we're doing this cool thing. Check it out. 2 weeks later, I was living in Austin at this time now, and we went to Cross Vegas, and I didn't even know about Interbike. I just knew that there was like I just knew that there was Cross Vegas. I didn't know who Brooke Watts was at the time, who put it on and is a legend. It was just like, dude, I was talking to Nigel, and it's like, Nigel, get your ass to Las Vegas. We're not getting a hotel room. We're going to be there for as long as we can be. We're going to go to this bike race, and we're going to hand out samples of coffee, because everybody who's anybody that we want to talk to and get in front of are going to be there. And Cross is blowing up. Oh my! And this is, I think, a year or 2 before it became a UCI. So this was kind of like one of the best years to be at Cross Vegas before it became a UCI race. And got up early, flew from Austin to Las Vegas. We were there we met up at the airport at like 9:30. We didn't have anything to do because I didn't even know the Interbike existed. It was just like, we're just going to go to this race. And I had my backpack full of 6-ounce sample bags of Cross Racer. And it was this crazy, beautiful Kenyan coffee. And we like got to the race early, and we just checked it out. And I was just like completely geeking out. And we started approaching people and go, hey, And we started meeting people that we knew from online. And at this time, it was basically Twitter because I'm not a Facebook person. And it was just like, oh my God, Chris, excellent to meet you. And and I remember being like really intimidated to go up to Julie Krasniak and Gabby Duran, who were racing for a Rafa, and I go, would you like a coffee? Right? A real kind of timid fanboy. And it was just like, oh, and I got to know both of them subsequently in different ways. And it was just like, and it gave one to Tim Johnson, who I had met previously at, shout out for this great bike shop, NYC Velo, and Andrew Crooks, who's an awesome guy. He was doing People for Bikes Ride from, I think, Boston and DC. First time I met Tim Johnson, I was like, this guy, right? I was just like, this guy. I knew of him, but it was like, this guy is like, I like this guy, and gave him one, and Jay Powell, right? All these different people, and then we just kind of blew up, and people started ordering coffee from us, and we got a few blog mentions, and then I was like, Louisville, gotta go to Louisville. Worlds is there, and Nigel was like, oh my God, I don't know, and I was like, I'm paying for it. I got a suite. We're gonna do a coffee shop pop up every morning. We're in the UCI headquarters hotel. I got a suite. Get your plane ticket. We're there. And so I don't know how much you guys know about what happened at Louisville Worlds, but it was epic on several accounts.
It was a mess.
Sorry, did you guys go to it?
Well, we're just right up the street, so I mean, we're an hour north, and
Okay.
that whole lead up, the Saturday, Sunday, it was just a mess.
Yeah, and so I did a road trip, and I road tripped with these guys, Team Yacht Club. That was kind of a hipster Austin bike club at the time, and it's a real good bike racing time. And we were just like social media fanatics because we had like 8 hours to kill driving to Nashville, but we were going to meet up with like all these people. And it was just like, oh my God, this is going to be like super cool. So we were just like social media the whole way up there. I get a suite. Nigel arrives. We get there the day after there were like tornadoes one day or something, right? And we got there the day after the big epic rainstorms. And then Yacht Club was going to do a ride. And then that cold front blew in. And then I remember doing, who did the single speed race? Someone did a single speed race that ended in a kind of a mini blizzard at night. And we raced that. And then we were going to do a ride the next day, except it was like 2 degrees out. And then we were going to do a bourbon ride. And so instead we were like, let's just go to brunch. And it was funny because like all these people started showing up from around the country. They're like, yeah, we want to ride with you. It's like, yeah, it's too cold. I'm like, yeah, we think it's too cold. Let's go have brunch. So we had brunch. We're like, oh, it's starting to warm up. It's like 10 degrees out. Let's go to the course. And we snuck on during a practice session to the World Championship. And I'll never forget this, like Helen Wyman rides by with Steph and she goes, nice bike. And I was like, whoa, she talked to me. Then I realized that she was Kona sponsored and I had a Kona bike. And then Marianne Voss and someone else were like right across the road from us and they were fixing their bikes. I was like, should I talk to her? No. Oh, I don't want to bother her. Oh my God, it's Marianne Voss. Right? And we snuck on and we like did a couple of practice loops and it was just like, oh my God, I can't. And I'm like, the whole time I'm on there, I'm going, I'm going to like take out a bunch of tape and they're going to get pissed. I'm going to crash and break my arm. And it was fine anyways, but it was just like, holy crap, we're on a world championship course. Nigel and I were like, we're just going to start social media promoting this, that we're going to do a free coffee shop before each day of the race. And then the floods thing started happening. All of a sudden, it was only going to be one day. And we're like, well, crap, let's just go ahead and keep on doing it. Let's just do it. You got up super early and we're brewing coffee in a suite. And all of a sudden, basically like half the American bike industry showed up in our suite. Because a really good friend of mine, Kate Dooley, Attention Cat Daily, had been telling people about our coffee. And she's like, oh, they're awesome. These guys are so cool. And they have great coffee. And so like the Rafa people showed up, Slade Olson and Jeremy Dunn, Steve Blick, who was at Oakley at the time, right? And I'm like, oh my God, Steve Blick. And then this really slight cross racer that I knew of showed up with a couple of people, and it was Mo Bruno Roy, who is like one of the most wonderful people, and Matt Roy, an insane epic motherfucking. He's the guy who does those like crazy enduro bike races. We were so green. We didn't even put out a tip jar. which we should have, because people would have tipped us because the coffee was great. And everybody was blown away at how good this coffee was. And it was just like, and we're just getting into it. It was just amazing. And then like the races started, so people started leaving. And we missed the first race, which sucked because it was Van der Poel and Wout. But I got there in time for the women's race and watched that. And it was just like, I told Katie Compton the first time that I spoke to her, it was like, I remember her race and hearing this roar going through the trees. And I was near the end of the course and she crested in second place. And I just like lost it. And just epic, and almost fainted because I was screaming so loud because she was in second place. And then it was the, changing conditions and the river was rising and all that. And it was just an amazing day, right? It was in my career, I've got a sporting background and I worked for the Topps company for a while and launched their first e-commerce products. And I got to go to Super Bowls and US Opens, golf and tennis, All-Star games, World Series, because the Yankees were always winning when I lived in New York. And that was awesome. And to this day, that finals day of having those 4 races in one day is one of the best sporting experiences I have ever had. Major sporting events. And that's like one of my top 3.
So you mentioned in your suite in the hotel about being green, not putting out a tip jar. But I'm curious because you have the marketing background, you have kind of that advertising mentality.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious for those listeners who have never tried a coffee that's hand roasted, where different bean location origins can taste different, and how you treat it is different. So I feel like you saying that it's a good cup of coffee is like saying, this brand new carbon bike rides like blah, 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 XYZ. It feels like this. And you're describing it to somebody that's only ridden like a Huffy BMX bike. They just are colorblind to the whole thing. So I'm wondering, one, what do you define as a good cup of coffee? And then how do you explain Grimpeur Brothers to somebody that is that green?
So here's the thing is I'm partly like jaded because I drink so much coffee and I drink so much high quality coffee.
Well, of course you
right?
are.
So frankly, like the coffee kicked ass. It was really great fucking coffee. Not to super hype it. What made it great is that they're single origins. Okay, and this is really important. Is that a single origin coffee means that it came from one farm, or it came from part of a farm, or it came from a cooperative of farmers of this one particular area. And it might be a side of a mountain, or it might be a couple of parts of a mountain, but generally it's one specific space. So it's not blended. Like most coffee you get, whether it's Folgers or Starbucks, are blended beans to get a consistent taste.
Why is it important to have a single origin?
Okay, it's important because with specialty coffee, you get different taste characteristics from different coffees. So for instance, Ethiopia, which is, you can argue about the birthplace of coffee, but really kind of it's Ethiopia and Yemen. Those East African coffees typically are very fruity. Ethiopian, I had one this morning, our green belt. It's a blueberry bomb. You make a cup of coffee, and yes, it has that nice, wonderful, warm coffee chocolate undertones to it. But my God, when you're grinding it fresh, you smell blueberries and you smell flowers and you smell, this year it's like super ripe cherries, and you get that in a cup of coffee. And so it's different from, say, like a Starbucks coffee, where normally, even if you don't get all the crap in it, you're going to get like this kind of bitter, dark roasted coffee taste that people really like. But it's bitter. This coffee is not bitter. This coffee, they have each coffee, like this Ethiopian, has a particular taste characteristic. Whereas you go to Guatemalans, they can be very fruity, but they have rich, dark chocolate. And Colombians have more of a bolder, more beefier, not beef tasting, but a big taste profile. I don't want to say strong because that's not a great describer, but they can be fruity, they can be chocolatey, they can be juicy, and they're just
so in
delicious.
it's like similar to how you can like a red from the XYZ region of France, or you only choose whites from California, or whatever. Like from a wine perspective, is that the soil, the temperature, the climate, all of those things drive what that specific coffee ends up tasting like to you. And from a single origin perspective, you're making sure that it's as pure as possible, so all of those differences can actually shine through, correct?
Exactly, because what typically happens with coffee is people mix blends so that you can have a consistent taste.
But the taste is
and
the entire point of why you have different coffees.
but here's the thing though, is that
It's why people brew different beer.
But people are used to Budweiser.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going with that question, is how do you address the guy who goes to Dunkin' and gets his coffee? How do you convince Dunkin' guy to try? And because I mean, let's be real, like your coffee is from a hand roasted premium coffee, specialty coffee perspective. It is less expensive than comparable coffees, but if you're comparing it to a large cup of
Dunks
to Dunkin', it's a lot more expensive. How do you talk to that person and get them to understand what makes your coffee special?
So there's a couple of things. One is just being out there and educating people. So that's one of the reasons why I started doing pop-ups. And it wasn't when I did the thing at Worlds, that wasn't the reason. I wanted to go to fucking Worlds.
It's good. Hey, so here's my business. It's going to be coffee, and we're going to do...
While I'm here,
we're going to do business at Worlds. Smart move.
Exactly.
I back it 100%.
Exactly.
That's a good marketing guy.
That was my excuse to my wonderful wife, Maggie, who puts up with us and goes through more pain than I can imagine, because it's hard to run a small business. I didn't discover it when I went to Worlds, but really it's when people aren't used to specialty coffee and really great specialty coffee. The trick is you brew it on site and then you hand them the cup and they're like, "Oh, can I have some milk and sugar?" And I always go, before you do that, just take a sip. Just take a small sip and slurp it. Get some air in there, and then taste it, and then you can put your sugar in it. Okay, so it's almost like Johnny Appleseed evangelizing coffee, because once people do that, you always get a look, particularly if people just drink like Starbucks all the time, or if they just drink Folgers. And there's nothing wrong with those coffees again, right? But you get that look, and people are like, "Whoa," and they're like, "This isn't bitter. This is really smooth." And even when I have like East African acidic coffees that's part of their profile, and you have to really get into it. But when they have those, that look is amazing. They go ahead, put the milk in. And like, I don't know, maybe half the people go ahead and put their milk in or their soy or whatever. But that other half is like their mind is exploded.
Yeah, so you're doing this whole evangelistic like opportunity. Like, I'm going to take you don't have the opportunity to maybe even understand what it is, but I'm going to open this small door. I'm going to open this door to this thing that you might not understand. But you've done this with this whole brand, and it's not just about the quality of coffee or the things you're doing. Like, you're opening a door, doing the same kind of Johnny Appleseed thing by bringing all these people, and granted, the Wide Angle Podium is one of them, but you're opening the door to people like Caroline Moniz, Sunny, Amanda Nauman, Amy D Foundation, the Hammersaw CX team, like the two coffees you're doing for the Wide Angle Podium, like. You're using this same method of evangelizing about the coffee as you are evangelizing with the people that you care about.
Well,
where did this model come from?
Well, it came from a couple places. One is I put my marketing hat on, and I've shot Super Bowl ads. I've roadblocked MLB.com and SuperBowl.com back in the day, or NFL, right? And I've done a lot of digital marketing. I've launched brands, Stride Gum. I did all the digital for Stride Gum when it launched. JetBlue, blah 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 blah, right? And I've done entertainment stuff, and I've worked. When I was doing entertainment stuff, it was children's entertainment, so I got to work with like Xbox, Microsoft, McDonald's, Ubisoft, and all this stuff. And I was always kind of frustrated with their lack of foresight of how to evangelize and immerse people into it versus the cost of doing it. as a small company, and part of the ethos, kind of the working ethos of Grimpeur Brothers is this has always been kind of like my side gig where I get to test stuff. When the company started 7 years ago, I completely did not believe in social media advertising. Okay, at that time, it was like you might as well go hand $5 bills on the corner. And at that time, when we launched Grimpeur Brothers, I was like, I am not going to spend any money on media. What I will spend money on is my effort. What I will spend time on is my effort to evangelize this coffee and these athletes with social media. But I'm not going to spend ad dollars. I don't have the resources because I run it as a lean startup. I don't have big deep pockets to do this. So then, how do you get to getting publicity on Wide Angle Podium? How do you get a relationship with Helen Wyman? And it's really simple. It's like, I don't have deep pockets. So what I do is I approach people and go, partnerships. Let's brand this, and I will give you the profits. Okay? And this came about first through Mo Bruner Roy and Matt Roy. And Mo was really tight with Amy Dombrowski. Right. And this was towards the end of Mo's pro career, and Amy was an up and comer. Amy was amazing. I got to see her race at Worlds, and I saw her race at Cross Vegas. I remember exactly where I was when I heard that she had been killed. And at the same time, I was going, Mo, we should do a coffee for you. And I was like, no. And then I got a text message from Matt saying, hey, we want to do this Amy D thing. Could you do an Amy D coffee? And I was like, yes. And he's like, I sent him the templates. He designed it. He got the photograph from the photographer, and it was like, we're going to give you all the profits. And that became our number one seller. We did this all in December, launched it at Cross Nationals at Boulder, which was cool because that's where I met the Bike Shop CX guys for the first time in person. And it blew up, and it became our best-selling coffee that year. And so that proved the model that I could get, I got like a mention in Bicycling Magazine. Thank you, Celine Yeager. Awesome person.
Friend of the show.
Fucking her and David, fucking badasses.
For sure.
There's so many really wonderful people in the sport. Yeah, there's a ton of douchebags. Steer away from them. It's easy.
You can see them a mile away.
Yeah, or like I've had people who have kind of screwed me over, and it's just like, okay, I'm done with you. Next.
So that brings up
those incredible people. So like, for instance, speaking of incredible people, Helen and Steph Wyman, okay, bringing back to them, like I'm all fanboyed out because she mentioned, she's like, nice bike. EF was what now is EF was going through its financial struggles, and they started crowdfunding the team, right? You remember when they did that? And Mark Legg and Stefan Wyman started this Twitter conversation about, well, geez, man, all I would need would be $15,000, and I'm going to give you a shit ton of impressions on Belgian TV, let alone all the American exposure, because we're coming back to America a couple of times. We'll be in America, and we're going to, promote your brand. And I emailed Steph and said, so you've lost your sponsorship, because that's the other part, is they had just lost their sponsorship. It's just like suddenly out of the blue. And kind of backstory, Helen had a really bad crash at the end of the season, I think, and was coming back. And so this was a big time comeback. And at the time, she was like 9-time UK champion, World Cup podium, multiple time racer, legend for on and off the bike. And she lost her sponsorship, right? And she was so cycling is a niche sport. Road cycling's the big kahuna of niche and mountain. Those are the big ones. And then there's cross. And then there's women's cross, right? So you're talking niche. And it was like, she's like one of the best athletes out there, and she's going to retire. Holy fuck, that's just wrong. So I was like emailing back and forth to Steph, and I was like, Steph, okay, I've never done this because this is where I make the most money, frankly. But what if we did a 6-month subscription and you guys get all the profit? Because we'll do a month campaign, and then I'll be able to turn over a chunk of change to you guys, so it can be a small bridge to whatever you guys are going to do. And it blew up because Helen was really smart and Steph's really smart, and they promoted and I was one small cog of what ended up being her team for the last year plus. But I got to tell you, like, the reward of it was amazing.
So from your perspective, Dan, I think we've had this conversation whenever we talk to somebody from the industry. Is there's so many people that I ride bikes. I have a ton of Instagram followers. I got 500 Instagram followers. I should be an ambassador for your brand. You should give me pro deals or discounts or whatever. Everybody's looking for that sponsorship.
I just barfed in my mouth.
Why why is the idea and the execution of a partnership so important to you, not only from a business perspective, but from you personally as Dan Manco? Why is a partnership so important?
It's important to me because, again, part of Grimpeur Brothers is to get to go to races, okay? But part of it is like I get to meet amazing fucking athletes. It's super cool to talk to Tim Johnson, or it's super cool to talk to Helen, or it's super cool to like be texting with Sunny or Amanda. I know what goes into them trying to be their best, and most people don't even think about it. The hours, the sacrifices, not being able to eat what you want when you want to eat it, but being really mindful of your diet. The struggles, the comebacks from, oh shit, I don't have a sponsor. What am I going to do? Well, why? Right. And like with Helen, it was great with Amy D Foundation. It was great to be able to, and it still is. Please buy their coffee, people. I like to send them money, and I do. It's, every month or every quarter, I tally up stuff for them, and I try to send them money based off the sales because it's their money. But with the Helen thing, it was like she's like a top 5 world athlete or top 10 world athlete, and she's not going to be able to race. She's going to retire.
Okay.
That's just wrong.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It is,
wrong.
And it's amazing.
Right?
It's amazing that you guys figured out a way to somewhat help with that. So,
and then that goes for Sunny, and that goes for Caroline. Please, people, buy their subscriptions, or Amanda. And and they become friends. Like, I'm not like, I don't see Amanda very often, but when I do, like, we shared a house at Cross Nats last year, and it was great. And she's like a good person. And unfortunately I like, she does Dirty Kanza, and I had the best experience there supporting her and the CTS athletes. And it was like, I want to do it this year, but my son was graduating. So next year, it sounds like she's going to do the extra large. And I don't know if they can have support.
That's a whole lot of, they cannot, but you can support all the people that are supporting them.
Right. So we're, if she does that, oh my God. But if she doesn't do that, I'm right there, and I might just go do the CTS stuff and support their athletes, because my God, those people are killing on their bikes, and it's so cool to be able to help them. It was like the Dirty Cans I did, it was so rewarding. People were breaking down. Like, people had spent all year long gearing up for this, and people had to get carted off to the hospital because they were like going into shock. And seeing pro elite athletes put themselves through that and be able to finish is amazing. And yeah, if I can geek out and help you and give you ice bags and make sure that you're, we get you in and out of clothes and you're on your way so you can go keep on slaying it. Yeah, I'm going to do that.
Yeah. So there's this thing that I'm picking up on you saying repeatedly throughout this conversation, which is, I want to help.
Yeah.
Which is I care and I want to help. Whether that's through you in going to races locally and being engaged in that space, or going out to Louisville and saying, okay, I want to push this new brand I have, but I want to like bring something to this community. Like you developed Grimpeur because you were like, oh, this coffee gel that I'm having is horrible. I want to help people have a better experience. There's this like narrative of Dan wants to help people have a better time and help the community continue to grow. And I think that's something that people too often in the cycling world don't focus on, right? We're all kind of in this space where we're like, we go to the race, we're like, all right, sweet, we paid our $20. Will you kindly give me my payout for Cat 4 40 plus, where I get $50? Or like there's this attitude of not giving back in a lot of spaces. And I love that your business model has been based on giving back. I think that is such a strong perspective to have, because that is ultimately what grows our community and makes things so much better when we're all thinking in that kind of I don't know what the mindset would be, but like this care and giving mindset instead of this taking mindset. And I think our nation has to figure that out in general. But when you see that and businesses like Grimpeur are modeling that, I think it encourages that in the community.
Well, it comes from a couple places. One is the love of these athletes and these people, right? I say this every once in a while, and people are eating because it's hard. It's really hard. You guys know this because you're doing this podcast. Talking to Bill at Crosshairs, it's hard to try to build a business. It's incredibly hard. It's incredibly hard to be a top level racer, whether you're top 50 all the way up to, and it just keeps on getting hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Racing at that elite level is just bananas.
And it's just, I have so much awe and respect for the sacrifices that people make to do that. That it's always kind of inspired me. And it's like, is there a little bit of, how can I help? How could I make this community, how could I make this scene better? Like I've always, just because I love cross so much and I love cycling so much, it's like, well, how can you make this better so more people will get involved?
Yeah, and you were harping on the fact that, hey, Dan Manco is not an athlete, right? And we've already proved you wrong. Mm-hmm. You are an athlete, so we can stop that piece of it. But it's interesting because I feel like in the cycling community, if you're really committed to it, you find a space in which you can give back, or you find a space in which you can be involved and make positive movement forward. And I think that your unique set of skills, just like anybody who's, whether you're a promoter or you're a professional athlete or you're a fan or you're Trek Bikes and you're hosting a World Cup or you're, whatever your lane or your bandwidth or your space is, it is this amazing community where people have figured out how to take the thing they have and find a way to support the people they care about and the sport that they care about, and start growing it and making positive change in that space through their talents, which is something that you don't always see in other places, because people are like, it's about me getting paid. It's about me getting paid. And I'm not saying these people aren't trying to make a living, for sure. I mean, I'm not saying you got to take care of your business, right? But there's this different mentality that I see, at least in cyclocross and in some other spaces within the cycling world, where people are so giving of themselves and time that it's just refreshing. And I think it's something we can all look at and say, that's a good model for behavior of how we should operate within the world.
Yeah, and part of it, I mean, frankly, it comes from a couple places. I mean, there's this love of both these things in the community and the people that are around them. Like a big company like SRAM, some people like their product, some people don't. But like,
doesn't really matter if you do or don't. They put money into the sport.
And the people that I've worked with, Kate and Rebecca, the mechanics, all kinds of people, they're freaking awesome people. They're really nice people, right? And they're a pleasure to work with, and they're awesome. Or, like Sherry from Portland, that's with Cross Crusade. You guys, if you ever have a chance, go do Cross Crusade for a race weekend. I did it once and it blew my mind. It's like you're an amateur and you're racing at Cross Nationals. Okay. And we could talk about just that scene forever and ever. Forget about the cool hipness of Portland. Portland's still weird. Austin is less weird now. But my God, that freaking series it's mind blowing. And they did, like, the year I went, the kiddie fields, the little Strider kiddie fields, were larger than the fields of any cross race in Texas. And I'm not dissing Texas cross. I mean, that's how nuts it is.
we need a whole lot more of that in general in our communities. Like,
yeah. And so a point. So one is the love. Okay, just the love of these things: coffee, people, bikes. People always ask me, and it's like, it's about the people. That's why I do it. It's amazing. Like, just you meet some great people, and it's that social aspect. Okay. Um, Two is, this was bred into me. I come from an immigrant family on both sides of my family, and there was a strong ethos of justice and things, like I had a hippie mom. Okay. And so, I grew up during, the ERA thing and feminism coming to the forefront. The fact that you don't even get me started about the selecting industry, but just as in general society, it really pisses me off when you see an inequity in the world. So that's part of it as well, and that's why I frankly have focused a lot on the women's side of it, because they need help. Everybody needs help. We need to make this better. The other part of it, the win-win part of it, and the giving part of it, comes from my startup world experiences. I was in New York. It was kind of funny. They called it Silicon Alley back in the mid to late '90s during dot-com days, and I was part of that scene. And to your point of I got to get paid, I got to get the one up. The thing that I learned from that, and then from running marketing groups and working with advertising outlets or websites, in the 2000s, and then at J. Walter, etc., was that if there's collaboration, there's a win-win mentality where you're not trying to get the one up on the person and, like, fuck you, pay me. You got to get paid. And I think it's important to get paid, and particularly if you're a freelancer, and you can take that attitude because you get screwed a lot of times. But if you can make all the ships rise and it's more equitable and it's more just, then it's win-win, which is why I'm like down with supporting you guys, because you make great content and you're making the community better. So, when Spencer approached me 3 years ago, I was like, dude, I can't foot out money. And he's like, okay. It's like, well, have a think about it. And then I like popped him an email and go, hey, Spencer, what if we did this? And he's like, done.
Well, right, because thinking back on your entire story, like I was just making myself notes. We've got bikes as a lifetime passion. We have this social component to it that you've kind of run as this through line through all of these things. You have your ideas that you were just talking about in terms of equality and equity and working for the right things and understanding that equity of effort does not equal equality. You're kind of a natural entrepreneur, and I think that's where Grimpeur Brothers, and I think that's where good admin, good marketing people, you have a lot of those mentalities. Whether or not you work for an ad agency or a marketing company or whatever, like there's still that entrepreneurial spirit, whether you start a business or not. And
yeah, you just gotta do it.
Right, and obviously there's the coffee piece, because we're talking to you because Grimpeur Brothers is a partner with the show, and we love everything that you are doing with your brand and supporting people and supporting racers and supporting races and trying to, as you said, lift all boats. But the one word that I keep coming back to for you, for our show, for everything that we've talked about, not only today, but every single 90 plus weeks that we've done this show, is community.
Yeah.
It's where it always comes back to that we're doing all of these things because we give a shit about our community. We care about what we do. We love how this sport makes us feel. We love the people that this sport has brought us. And we are willing to fall on the sword in whatever way we know how, exploit our individual superpowers however we know how, to spread that gospel, to share that love, and to get more people into our community, because more is always better.
Yeah. There's just the benefits, it's that passion, it's that drive. It's like, oh my God, Frenchie Maneve like crosses the finish line on Sunday and collapses.
Yeah.
And I seriously, I freaked out. I mean, I wrote this. I freaked out because I thought she had like passed out.
I saw your tweet. I was like, oh.
Yeah, seriously, I was like, oh my God. And then it's just like massive respect for her for putting in that effort. I was freaking out the first half of the race when she was in the first three, and I was still freaking out every time I saw her, because it was just like, come on, Caroline, preach it. And you saw her cross the line, and it was just like maximum effort, boom, done.
Yep.
To be able to do that is just amazing, mind blowing, and I love that, and to just have like a, frankly, just for me to be like slightly, as a person, not about Grimpeurs, but just to like have a slight association with that is freaking mind blowing.
But that's the association that so many fans and so many people feel, because this is a community, because there are those opportunities to have a moment where you have met that person, where you have touched
and have a genuine moment with somebody.
And I think that's rare in a lot of other sports. I think it's rare. I mean, like, you go, you're one of 50,000 people at an NFL game. How do you have that experience? How do you even begin to connect, let alone be a business owner who's like, I have an idea, Tom Brady, I would like to market a coffee.
I'm going to do a pop-up
stand
on the sidelines right behind behind Belichick.
Right.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Right. Like, Bill in his cutoff sweatshirt, right? This is not like, those opportunities don't exist. And that is one of the joys about the sport that we're engaged in, is there's this opportunity to be part of the narrative.
It's accessible.
Yeah, and it's accessible, and it's there for cross, it's there for mountain, and all the enduro stuff.
Little less for road, We can get there. I feel like
I really love gravel, because partly it's a safety issue. Like, it's just, frankly, it's dangerous riding your bike in Austin right now, and and this is as a former hardcore bike commuter in Austin.
Gravel has a lot of allure for a number of different reasons, no matter who you are, where you're at. But that sport is still open, right?
Yes.
Roads
wide open. Yeah.
Road's a little harder to access.
Yeah, but with road, we were talking earlier, riding up into the clouds, you can be within 4 inches of your hero.
Correct. And I feel like the people who are racing road are way more accessible than they possibly ever have been. Just the people, not necessarily the teams, right? But the people, right? Freaking Mitchell Docker is on this network.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'll give a quick shout out to Leanne Ganzar from Austin, Texas, who's at the World Championships right now this week. One of the joys was sponsoring her club team, and then seeing her or Jolene Holland, like, seeing both of those women become incredible racers, and then Leanne being able to win the national championship as an amateur, and then getting picked up by a pro team, and then not even 3 years later she's at the World Championships, and oh, by the way, she works full time. Well, it's freaking mind blowing.
And that's the cool thing, like, Doug, to your point, that we're talking about is this is all of our community. We're all connected because, Dan, as you said earlier in our conversation, we're looking at a niche of a niche of a niche within American sporting. So the fact that we even know each other is, like, not surprising, but the fact that we hold some athletes in such high regard is also kind of funny to me, because we're really 1 degree away from any of these elite athletes in America, just because our family is small.
Caroline Mani was 1 door down.
Right. Right.
All weekend.
Yeah.
At Trek.
And just that, again, just like going back to that idea of community, that whether it's Carolyn's success or Sonny's success or Becca's or anyone around us or anyone around any of our listeners that's having success, even just like your local hotshot Cat 1, they're part of your family. And like, that's where I just keep kind of coming back to that as part of this ongoing thread with everything that you're doing, Dan. And man, this was a great insight into who you are. It was cool for me to get a little bit of under the hood of, because I've always wondered, like,
why?
Why is his last name Manco? I thought it was Grimpeur. Like, it just makes sense that it's like him and his brother that that started this company. But it's cool to hear the rationale as to where it came from, the romance of where all of that came from, and hearing a lot of your stories about putting all of these pieces together.
Yeah, it's totally imbued in this, and like Community. Quick story: day 2 of Worlds in Louisville, there were no races, and so that day we were like jam packed, and that really was amazing because everybody was hungover from the night before from drinking bourbon.
Well, it was Louisville.
It was Louisville, and like the funny thing is we were in some bourbon bar that was connected to the what's that place called? The something house, the Galt House or something, whatever the headquarters hotel was. And we were sitting around drinking bourbon at a table, and Pat McQuaid and his wife storm in and bum rush our table and basically kick us out. And that was mind blowing because it was like, oh my God, it's like Pat McQuaid. But the next morning, everyone's hungover and we're making coffee. And it was just wonderful. Everyone was blissed out from an amazing day and a wonderful night. And, dribs and drabs, people are going out. And we're making coffee, and in walks Adam Meyerson. And he's like, yeah, I heard about you guys from Kate or something like that. And he's just, and we make him coffee. And, it's getting later in the morning, and he's still just hanging around, chatting with people, drinking coffee. And then it ends up as like, he's like one of like 4 or 5 people left. And Nigel had to fly back to New York, and we had to like clean up the suite and all this stuff. And we're kind of like, and we're just talking. It's cool. It's like, we're talking to fucking Adam Meyerson. Holy fucking shit. Right. And he's super cool. And oh my God, this is really cool. And he's like, this coffee's great. He's like, I want to buy some. I'm like, man, we're not selling. He's like, no, I want to pay you. I want a bag. And it's like, no, here, just take it back. You're Adam. And he's like, no. Here's $20. And he threw down $20 and left. And that was like the only money we made that weekend.
Yep, it's like proof of concept. We've made some money. This is part of your plane ticket home, Nigel. Now now don't miss your flight. Don't miss your flight.
Yeah, no, but it was like, and I didn't, it was just like super cuddly, wonderful, like nice memory. But
and those are the memories that I think we all hold on to and keep us coming back to this community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a bazillion stories.
I'm sure.
People, go buy this coffee. It's really freaking good. It's from Kenya. The label, okay, it helped make our name because I'm really picky about the Kenyans. Tim Johnson, a year after I gave him a bag of coffee, I was at we did a Rafa gentleman's race in New Jersey, and we just served coffee for free to the racers.
Hold on. What's a Rafa gentleman's race?
So part of their marketing thing was they wanted to do experiential marketing, which is really cool. And it's like, I love doing it. That's why I do the pop-ups. So they would invite people, different teams from around the country, and they did it kind of regionally. So this one was mainly East Coast people, and they would invite people to come and race. And you had to have a team of, I think, 6 or 7. You all had to ride together, and they had this crazy, really super rough course. And so if you know anything about Pennsylvania, is like the roads, and it was near the border of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, I think. And those roads there are like walls, and they're like relentless. And you wouldn't think, you're like, oh, it's Pennsylvania, it's rolling, before you get to the mountains, it's nice rolling. No, there's no like rolling. It's just like, it's in your face. So it was a really tough course. And so they finish, they go and they race, and they finish, and there's food. And I go say hi to Mo, and I'm like talking, and like Tim's like, that bag of coffee that you gave me in Las Vegas? And I'm like, holy shit, he remembers that? He's like, yeah, it's up on my fridge. That's like my favorite bag of coffee I've ever seen. and like, it was super cool doing the Rafa thing. They had like a nice money shot of our coffee steaming in the video they released afterwards. So win there, but it was like, that fucking made it. For me, it was just like, I don't care how much money I spent doing this. I don't know. I don't care like that made it for me. And that's like fanboy was just like, yeah. But it worked out, publicity wise and otherwise for us. But that, it's those little things, right? It's the people, it's the Adam story. It's, it's Kate Dooley, who I hadn't seen in years. And I saw her at Sea Otter, and I was like, oh my God, Kate. And you really like somebody, and you hadn't seen them in years, and like almost immediately, like 2 seconds into it, it was like, it was just like, oh my God, it's like, yeah, of course it's Kate. Yeah, this is awesome. And then all of a sudden, Nico walks by and Kate and Nico know each other. And then I get to meet Nico, this amazing guy with squid bites and right. And it's just, that's the wonderfulness of this community. And
Well,
it's available to everybody. And it's like, do something, make it better, contribute to it any way you can.
and it's all those little things, not only from like I was saying, you supporting these races, but even down to, again, like back to the intro, you're talking about the wind in your hair, the smell of fresh air, the sound of the cassette, just all of those little things that
Sensory stuff.
that create the kind of watercolor that is this cycling community. And I think the more that our listeners kind of expose themselves to the different portions and the different tribes. Going back to Bike Snob, you mentioned him earlier. He was the first cycling book that I read. So I'll give him a little shout out with the different bike tribes.
Yeah.
But the more that you expose yourself to cyclocross, to road racing, to enduro, to downhill, to cross country mountain bike, to all of those different things and all of those different communities, you'll appreciate your cross bike more. You'll appreciate your tri bike more. You'll appreciate your enduro bike more. Just seeing how many people are out there who just love to ride bikes and have fun, and that all of those things aren't really that different, even though we try and kind of nerd out and make them all different. So, like, all of that being said, and all this different conversation we've had, what the final question is going to be. So, Dan, if you could have our Pebbles remember one thing from this kind of long and overarching conversation today, what would you like them to take home?
For my long blowhard stories.
other than a bag of coffee, what would you like them to take home with them?
A couple of things. Contribute any way you can. And, even if you're at a race, help a promoter roll up the tape. That, like, just small little, or you need somebody to help with registration. Contribute any way you can. Ride your bike. Everything's always better when you ride your bike. Like, it's my personal therapy, but just you get a chance to think about things and clear your head, even if it's a short ride. And I don't do this enough. And it's like, even if it's an hour ride, it's not epic ride, whatever, just go do it because you're exercising it and it's great for your brain. Be kind to everyone. Wave. You see somebody, say, hey, how you doing? Because, I'm a little insight, you probably won't know this, but I really don't like social media now. And it's because it walls us off, and instead of being walled off, connect with somebody, because you never know who they're going to be. And they probably have amazing stories, and you can learn a lot from other people. It doesn't matter how old they are, what kind of shape they're in, what kind of bike they're riding. I mean, just be kind.
That's like how I try to basically live my life, and I appreciate you enumerating that.
Yeah. But in real life, I'm a big asshole, so there you go.
Well, but you acknowledge it. That's step one.
That's step one, right?
I acknowledge my fault.
Yes.
No, I'm not. I try.
No,
not
you're
to
not, Dan. No, you're not.
Okay.
This,
but yeah, I can be a grumpy motherfucker sometimes too. So there you go.
That's
my kids in the morning.
Before the Grimpeur brothers has hit your lips. Yeah, I'm sure, for sure. Well, this has been awesome, man. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening and, giving it up from spending time with the fam. We appreciate it. It has been awesome to spend some time, learn a little bit behind your history and the Grimpeur brothers' history. Everyone, if you do not know, we talk about them enough on the show. I feel like you've been mentioned plenty of times, but if you don't, go and get yourself some Grimpeur Brothers coffee. Obviously, the Hello Cyclocross Friends and the Full Schleck does benefit the network, but all of what Dan does benefits people in our cycling community, and that is huge. And thank you, Dan, for what you do.
Oh, sure. No, I love this.
Yeah, so click the link in the show notes. Head to the Grimpeur Brothers website. If you're not interested in the Hello Cyclocross Friends Espresso or the Full Schleck coffee that support the Wide Angle Podium, read the stories about all of the other coffees that Dan has. Read where their origins are. Read what their blend is, or read what the beans are, and then read what they go to. And then that can help inform your decision based on what flavors you like. But if you're, basic coffee drinker like me, you just go with who you want to support.
There you go.
Yeah, or
Because I mean, I'm that guy who's riding the BMX bike and has no idea what carbon is. So like that's why I was asking the questions about like what's a
yeah.
good cup of coffee.
And if you want, if anybody ever has questions, I mean, feel free to ping me on Instagram or Twitter. Those are the two social platforms you'll find me on. Or you can email me at dan@grimpeurbrothers.com, and I'll answer any of your questions. If you want to try something and you're not sure, I always recommend the Adventure Roast. It's kind of like the gateway drug into um, specialty coffee because it's a nice medium roast, and you can do it with a French press or you can do it with your drip machine. It doesn't really matter. But if you got questions, I mean, ping me. I'm available. I'm always happy to help people learn more about this because it's really, you don't have to spend a ton of money to have great coffee.
I agree, and I have one confession / question for you. So,
Okay.
I started following you on Twitter a while ago, and every once in a while in the afternoon, sometimes in the morning, there'll be a dumpster on fire, and
morning edition,
right? Morning edition, evening edition, and I will admit to you that for a while I was like, all right, I'm wondering if this is a commentary, or I wonder if Dan's just roasting coffee, and this is a fire of roasting coffee, or if this is just a commentary on life. And then I realized that's probably both. It's probably both of things.
It's all commentary. Previous career, I was involved in politics.
Oh, there we go. That is an entirely different,
and that's the end of that conversation.
That's a different podcast for us, for sure.
No, but frankly, like one of the things is that it's a bane of my existence is that it came from being a kid and being kind of a nerd and being a political junkie, and then actually getting involved in it and then moving away from it. As soon as I spent enough time in it, it was like, nope.
Yep, nope. Anytime you open up the old tweet box, you're. But I wanted you to know that I have now decided that you're roasting beans. So that's what I'm thinking of it. You're roasting
politics. It's political commentary.
You're roasting somebody at some point in time. So, well, thanks, Dan. We appreciate you taking the time.
Cool. No, it's awesome, guys, and seriously, like you guys are killing it, and I hope this episode helps in any way, but it's just like you guys are just amazing. Seriously.
Thanks, Dan. Thank
Super
you.
cool.
So that was an awesome interview with Dan. Dan's got stories for
you lost your accent.
Days. I did. It's gone now.
You left us with an accent.
I did,
and it made me very uncomfortable being the Midwest person in the room. But yes, Dan does have stories and name drops and all of those things
from everywhere,
from downtown, from the back country. He's got them coming from everywhere, and he's a great storyteller, and he's an even better human being. Just somebody that will always go out of his way to take care of you and to help out and to just go above and beyond.
100%. And I think I have a request of you, Pebbles. I would like you guys to all reach out to Dan and see about the hummingbirds and see if there are now baby hummingbirds that have resulted from what happened several weeks ago at Dan's house when we were recording this episode. So make sure to reach out to Dan and ask him how the hummingbirds are doing, and he can give you a live update of his hummingbird.
The Gravelot, presented by Net Geo.
Net Geographic. As always, this is a melancholy day.
It is. We're going to be a foster podcast.
Yeah.
Or what's the proper terminology?
I'm unsure. Unattached?
Unattached? Floating?
I don't. So we want to thank.
Hold on.
We want to thank Road ID for providing the lovely studio space we've had for almost a year and a half now, John. We've been in this studio space for a long time. Road ID has been a great partner with us in this space.
And it's continuing.
And it's continuing to.
They're just going through some flux.
Yeah, they're just
with their business now.
They're building a new building, and
the problem is they're growing too fast.
So they're building a new building, and we're not going to have a home for a little while. But as our new studio comes online, we'll be back in that. But so we may do a little remote recording at some other spots. I don't know. I've got a new office. That would be fun.
Right.
We can go there. We'll
Bring
check
some
it out.
Blankets in.
Yeah, hang them over the windows.
So yeah, don't worry. We're not going anywhere.
And you can still go to Road ID by clicking the show notes. The link. Yes, that's what it is. The link in our show notes, and you can save up to 50% on your next Road ID order. And a thank you to all of our Pebbles, old and new. Head on over to wideanglepodium.com and become a WAP member today. Make sure you select the Gravelot as the show you want to support when you're on the website and you're signing up to give us stuff. It would be awesome to have you aboard this ship.
Yeah, it would mean the absolute world to us. So no matter what the donation, it all goes towards helping us bring this show to your ears each and every week. And I want to hit it again. We talked about it at the beginning. Go buy the full Schleck, the Hello Cyclocross Friends espresso brands.
All the
from
Grimpeur
Brothers.
coffees. Get on all of them.
And if you get to the website and you see a cyclist on there that you've talked to, that you've had a great interaction with, buy their coffee, because that coffee, the proceeds from that are going to go to support their efforts racing bikes.
100%. Also, we are brought to you this week by our good friends at Works. The Works HydroShot is absolutely the ultimate tool for you cycling enthusiasts out there.
Yeah, I don't think we really even need to describe it anymore. Plug it in anywhere, portable power adapter, portable power cleaner. Plug it in anywhere, 320 PSI.
Draws water from any source.
5 times the pressure of a garden hose, 5 angle settings on the sprayer.
It breaks down like this very small thing, can fit in a 5-gallon bucket. It's very small,
fit
very
in a book bag.
Yeah, I'm
The
kind of
little hose sticks out, but you can fit the whole thing in a book bag.
But it's pretty amazing because then you can take it wherever you need to go to clean your bike, to clean things that are further away than that.
To win every water gun fight this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. Just build yourself a contraption that goes on your back full of 2-liter bottles and some pressure valves.
You'd look like a Ghostbuster.
It'd be pretty dope.
It would. And then, it would be mandatory to buy some more Works tools and build yourself a fort, because you're going to need a fort
to defend.
Yes.
So
it's very important.
So make sure you go to Works and Works
get prepared
Tools
for the summer.
And get prepared right now for your busy summer of pissing off the neighborhood kids because you built a fort and are shooting at all of them out of your fort
the neighbor kids?
as a 40-year-old man.
I was going to say, is it more the neighbor kids, or is it like the local zoning commission, because they're going to be super pissed that you didn't get any permits to build anything? Because that would be the TGL sanctioned way to do this, would be not get permits.
Correct. Check your HOA. And then
do the opposite.
Do the opposite of whatever it says and build yourself whatever you want with all the tools you get at workstools.com.
Right. So for right now, Works is offering all of you 15% off all of the HydroShots and accessories. There are more discounts coming. Right now, we know that it is for sure still on the HydroShot. You can find all of the Works HydroShot products, accessories, all that stuff at yourcleanbike.com. And to get the 15% off, enter code CLEANBIKE at checkout.
That is YOURCLEANBIKE.com and enter the code CLEANBIKE at checkout. And we hope to see you later on this winter or moving into gravel season, riding out on those gravel trails or on the trails hard and clean.
And before we close out today, we want to make sure you guys got, that little bonus piece. And a little bit like just a little bit more love from us. So we also want to thank our friend Adam and everybody over at Be Free Ride Bike Cycling Apparel, because they've stepped up this year and they've stepped up their support, and we've been working with them for our last 4 kit orders.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
A couple team orders, couple TGL orders, and the coolest thing about it is every single one of those has been customized to like the specific specifications that we wanted for jerseys, for bibs, for chamois, for vests, for outerwear.
All of it. And it's custom in that way if you want to build it that way. But they also have kits that you can just buy right off the shelf.
Right.
And it is the same quality, but it's the way that they've packaged together those fabrics. Everything, socks. I got knee warmers that I am loving. And I never had knee warmers before, but I have thermal kit and knee warmers, and I find that it's just about right when I'm in that kind of weird, 30 to 50 zone before it's really too cold that I need full.
An awkward phase of temperature where it's like, well, you can't go full thermal
because I'll be too hot.
You're going to be hot, and then you're going to be unzipped, and you're going to be that guy that has warm arms and frozen chest hair.
Weird. But you can solve that problem. You just go to bfrbcycling.com. Take a look at all the things they can help you get outfitted with, crazy attention to detail, and full custom orders for you or your team as you're getting ready for next year. You can get all that linked up there. Again, bfrbcycling.com, and figure out how they can help you and your entire team get outfitted for 2020.
And also, hand up gloves. You guys know by now, amazing gloves, apparel. We haven't stopped talking about the flannels. Saw the sleeveless flannel show up this morning.
Oh,
and
so good.
the email opener for that was like, it was, forget what it was, but it was something about Hail 3, Praise Dale. And I was like, that is the song of my people.
Yep, Hail 3, Praise
is,
Dale. That is
yep.
right. The marketing,
That is
targeted marketing,
right
John.
in my wheelhouse.
Targeted marketing. Make sure you click the link in our show notes because of internet pirates who have stolen our code, but click the link in our show notes and then use the code Pebble $ at checkout to save yourself 20% on everything in store. And now, golf gloves. So get yourself some golf gloves if that's
and
socks if that's a thing that you do or have a loved one that does.
Right. If they think your cycling is silly and you think their golf is silly, now you have commonality and you can buy them some flair.
Exactly. So they look a little bit better.
That you approve of.
Agreed.
I think that's the most important piece of all this.
Dad, I know you like golf, and I know you think I'm crazy for wearing these pink flamingos. Here's some gloves that match.
Right. Yeah.
It's perfect.
Now we can go.
Also, a big thanks to our friends at Knox Gear. Make sure you stay safe riding or running after dark with their Tracer 360 vest, or keep your little fur babies, maybe your cat, if you like to walk your cat, safe with the Light Hound vest. Did they make one small enough? Maybe for like a Maine Coon cat.
I think it's like a. I want because I was looking for it for Rosie.
Yeah,
but she's like she's be like a small end of the medium.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think
so you
like
could probably put it on a big cat.
Yeah. I think it was like a 13-inch like chest.
That's a big.
It's a big cat. It's a big
Maine
kitty.
Coon. Maine Coon.
Big
so
kitty.
Get your Maine Coon set so that you can take your Maine Coon on walks around the neighborhood and freak out all your neighbors. But you can do that with these crazy bright vests that allow you and your pets to be seen. And John, how can our listeners save?
They can use code Pebbles because it hasn't been stolen by said internet pirates that stole the hand-up code. Go to knoxgear.com and use code Pebbles at checkout for 35% off your order. Right now, though, they are running a 42% holiday sale, and they're trying to close out right before the end of the holidays. So you might be able to snag a little bonus savings before Christmas and get that runner or cyclist in your life protected. And last but not least, don't forget to become a Wide Angle Podium member today. Get exclusive access to bonus content that can only be found by becoming a member of the Wide Angle Podium. And that is bonus content that not only includes our show, but
everybody's show.
All the shows on the network. And obviously it goes to support stuff that you care about and that you're listening to regularly because you are still listening this deep into the episode.
Absolutely. And above all, thanks for listening this deep into the episode and like always enjoying our ad roll and sometimes commenting on it and whatnot. This is just for you. Thanks for giving us a chance, listening to our conversations and engaging in this process. We can't do this without this entire community, and we love hearing from you and love having you share this with people. That is important to us.
Yeah, like hearing from you guys, like Doug said, meeting you guys at events, getting messages, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Yeah, we're at the Gravel Lot literally everywhere.
All the places. Or through the website at thegravellot.com. We have a ton of cool stuff coming up for Season 3. A lot of you, an uncomfortable amount of you, have already commented about the new graphics for Season 3. I think most of you were just very uncomfortable that it changed. No one actually had negative comments.
What happened? Are you guys okay?
Right. It was just everybody was worried.
That's the thing.
Yeah, it's Season 3. It's time to change it up and make it a little brighter.
Yeah, so we're doing that. And you're making our days brighter.
Yeah.
We're making our colors a little brighter, but we're switching up a little bit. But Season 3 is exciting. We're excited about it. One thing that hasn't changed is our intro and outro music is by our good friend and band Undertipper. Go check them out at undertipper.bandcamp.com and thank them for supporting this show. So that's a wrap for today. As we say each and every week, decisions and trails are made by those who show up. So if we don't see you on the trails this week, we'll see you next time. Bye, John.
Bye, Doug.